Welcome back to another episode of Idiosyncratic Fables, a part of Wilderness Fire Productions, where we are cultivating the passion for books, audiobooks, and just overall storytelling. Since time first began, we have all been storytellers. Everybody's got a story to tell, and I want to hear yours. I'm your host, James, and today I am just absolutely thrilled to welcome a true powerhouse in the genre of LitRPG books. A man who's written or co-written over 50 books, built massive interconnected universes, and somehow does it all while raising 9 children. He's a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, holder of a degree in ancient languages, former missionary in India, practicing attorney, and one of the most prolific and beloved voices in LitRPG. Born on Krypton, Zenla, or Planet Vegeta, depending on which kid is asking, please welcome the author of the hit Welcome to the Multiverse series, Life in Exile, Dragon Sorcerer, and so many more. Ladies and gentlemen, Sean Oswald. Sean, thank you so much for being here today, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, James.
This is just such a treat for me. When Doug Losey first connected us and I was doing my background research on him, like, U.S. Marine veteran, that's what I'm talking about. So we've got already that common field, me prior military, you prior military.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So the Marine Corps is one of those things that I absolutely despised, but I'm so proud that like while it's happening, you despise it, but afterwards you're proud of it,
Yes.
So.
Yep, I can relate to that a little bit. I started Navy and finished Army before I retired out. And my best friend here locally in Iowa, he will often joke to his comrades because he was Marine as well. He goes, "You see that? He fired twice and missed both times. He could have just chosen Marines at the first."
So, ironically, I actually did 2 years in the Army Reserve after my Marine Corps time while I was in college because there wasn't a Marine Reserve unit anywhere. And I did it. And it was the biggest, I don't know. So as an E4, I was actually commanding a fire team in the field, and we were doing, real responsibility for human lives.
Yeah.
And this is the reserve, granted, okay, but at the Army Reserve unit, they had E6s pushing a broom. So,
oh man,
it was just a culture shock for me.
Yeah, I'm kind of speechless right now. E6s pushing a broom.
Yep.
Oof. Okay. So from serving in the Marine Corps and then, like you just mentioned, the Army Reserves, straight out of high school, earning a degree in ancient languages, missionary work in India, becoming an attorney, and now prolific author, that's quite the journey. How would you say all of these experiences shaped who you are today?
I mean, everything that we do contributes, like, how we grew up, the family structure we had. Some of us have it better, others of it have it harder, but whether it was hard or easy, it helps shape who you are. I grew up in that era when parents needed a reminder at 10 o'clock to find out where their kids are. So, it wasn't that my parents didn't love me or anything like that. It's just, it was a different kind of standard than what we have now.
Yeah.
And so, all of those things, contribute in different ways. The Marine Corps added something that I probably needed, that probably lots of young people need. I learned that I can tolerate anything for a limited duration.
Okay.
Doesn't matter how bad it is. I mean, and there are some pretty rough circumstances when you are in the service where you're in a bad way for a period of time, and it's hard to even explain to other people. In fact, I had a platoon sergeant tell me, you can try to tell these stories to other people, but nobody who hasn't been through this will ever understand it.
Correct.
But then, I went to school to do something that I had an interest in. I studied ancient languages. So that was kind of that pie in the sky visionary thing, because I got accepted to a doctoral program, but realized that if we were lucky, 20% of the students in the class in the doctoral program would have a job in the field when it was done. And I had a wife and kids, no interest there. My wife had always wanted to go back to India, so we ended up going there and spent the year 2000. We worked in some orphanages there, which was really cool. That really shaped our parenting, our understanding of parenting. In a lot of ways, we had 2 kids while we were there, and my wife was fairly pregnant. She actually was like 8 months pregnant when we flew back from India, which we did not tell the airline because I'm not sure they would have let us fly 20 hours with her pregnant. But when you're young, you're invincible. So,
of course.
But that shaped how I think about responsibility, how I think about family. Practicing the law gives you a completely different understanding. Now, lawyers don't actually think like normal human beings because you can't. In fact, after about 20 years of practicing law, what was really getting to me was that the law always seemed to be about form and never about function. It was about, follow these rules. It doesn't matter what the outcome is. We've got to follow this particular structure, which somehow just chafes my sense of justice and right and wrong.
Right.
And I represented clients who were usually they were injured in some way. Okay. And almost every single one of them, 99.99 whatever percent, had genuinely been injured by something. But a lot of them also tried to milk it for more than it was worth.
Sure.
And then the people who were responsible for their injuries, the insurance companies who were supposed to pay out on these claims, tried to hold back. They fought, they resisted instead of just giving what was due. And it always caused so many headaches for people and so much suffering. I don't have a great fix for it, but that definitely has shaped my vision of how the world works. I strongly believe in personal responsibility, but I also believe in a sense of corporate social justice as well.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
So, and I think that probably then shapes my books.
Okay.
Writing for me started when I, so in May 21st, 2000, so May 19th, 2019, I asked my wife, hey, my grandfather, he's 92 with dementia. He was living with me, my wife, and our kids. I didn't want to have to put him in a nursing home, but he'd get sundowner, so he would be scared at night. So I'd come home from working at the law office, and I would end up sitting up with him till 1 a.m. I like to say I could only watch so many episodes of Gunsmoke before I needed to do something else.
Yeah.
So on that May 19th, I asked my wife, would you mind if I spent $200 on a Chromebook? I think I'm gonna try to write a book. And I had said I wanted to write a book when I was 17, so many years before.
Sure.
But that was one of those things that just died along the way. I wouldn't have even thought of myself as a creative person. I guess my creative outlet was D&D.
Yes.
But so I got the Chromebook 2 days later. I started writing, and then on September 2nd, so late Labor Day of that same year, I had the book done. I sent a submission sample to Atheon Books, and Steve Belo, one of their founders and owners, contacted me just a few hours later that he had read it. And a week later, I had a contract with them. Now, that is a way different experience than authors in LitRPG are going to have with publishers today.
Sure.
I think I was Atheon's third LitRPG series. Now they put out 3 LitRPG series a week, so it's a big difference. So I was writing. I was working full time. I'd write in the morning before I went to the office. I'd write over my lunch break. I would I had to drive to a lot of court appearances, so I would be thinking my stories through as I drove places. I would then come home, have dinner with the wife and kids, and do all of that. And then at 9 o'clock, I'd sit down again and write till midnight or whatever. It was a passion, and I really found that it filled a spot that I hadn't known that I needed. And so I was well into my third book when the first one published. I was 47 when it published, so only 30 years after I said I was going to write a book the first time. And it was fabulous. Unfortunately, that was 2020, so COVID had hit. My grandfather had fallen and broken his hip, and we'd had to take him to a nursing home because we simply weren't able to provide him the care that he needed. And we did that immediately before COVID caused all the lockdowns. So we were barely able to see him. They did. He decided to go off dialysis, so they did let us come in to see him, say goodbye. And it just so happened that I had gotten the physical copy of my first book, Watcher's Test.
Yeah.
And my grandfather's one of the people who introduced me to the love of reading with Tarzan and Zane Grey, and a variety of different things.
Oh yeah.
And so I gave that book, and it was great. We have pictures of him holding it, and he died that night holding that book. I mean, it was he was always so proud. He was always asking me how the book was coming and all of those things. So, but I've come a long way from then, I guess. I kept writing through, and then in 2021, I was on pace to earn more in royalties from books than I was from my law practice. And my wife was starting to tell me, look, something's got to give. You've either got to give up your law practice, you've got to give up writing, or you're going to give up your family. And,
yeah,
fair enough. I was definitely a workaholic. I've probably always been a workaholic. But I loved it so much. And so we sat down and we did the math. If it had been up to me, I probably would have waited another year to make sure everything was more stable. But we took the chance, and in October of 2021, I left practicing law and went full time as an author.
That's fantastic.
I mean, we've been really blessed since then. So,
yeah, absolutely. Now, when I was doing the necessary background research, your author bio has this really fun line about being born on Krypton, Zenla, or planet Vegeta, depending upon which kid is asking.
Mm-hmm.
How does your large family influence your writing life and the stories you tell?
Well, first off, I interact. So I should clarify. I have 9 children. One of our daughters passed away 11 years ago, complications following childbirth. So I have an 11-year-old grandson, and he never really got to know his mom. But so that trauma absolutely shaped. And you'll see in especially in Life in Exile, you'll see some instances to how a parent could feel about the loss of a child. So,
sure.
Then 4 of my kids actively read my books. It's odd because their favorite one is the one that's been least commercially successful, but hey,
right.
So it's good. And one of my daughters helps beta read for me. I send her chapters every week, and she's a teacher, so she does the whole write-up of what she liked, what she didn't like. We kind of talk about pacing and stuff like that. I have another daughter who lives in Chicago who's very into all of this, and we talk about it on a regular basis. In fact, her and her husband were thrilled because I have a new series coming out in July, and it has their favorite narrators, Kate Reedy and Michael Kramer, narrating the series. So, so family shapes it by a factor of 2 things. First off, it grounds my values in how I perceive the world, how I perceive the interaction between. I once got a criticism that Silas, the main character from Welcome to the Multiverse, is the oldest 22-year-old in the world because of what he likes. But here's the thing. I introduced my kids to all of the 80s things that I loved, the 90s stuff.
Yes.
And it's a bonding experience between us, and they love them too. Okay. My wife sometimes will say, "Oh, they're just humoring you," but I talk to them. They ask to watch these things. They want to do these things. We kind of have these rules, like at a certain age, you can watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off with Dad,
Right.
and different shows like that, and different movies that we're defining. And my 10-year-old daughter, who is our youngest, loves singing 80s music. So, go figure. The other day she was humming Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fears. So
Very good selection.
so it's just it shapes it, and it shapes my idea of how parents and children interact, how families interact, and what the value is. But it also shapes it because it's a work ethic. Because I have been very blessed with the success of what's happening, and that success blesses my family. I get to help my kids in a variety of ways. I get to help neighbors, and I get to help people we go to church with, and and just it. Blessing is never meant to be something that you keep just for yourself.
Correct.
You're always supposed to share it with other people.
Correct.
And I've had kids have an emergency, and it was an emergency for them. It was a blip on the radar for me. So, we simply paid for something that would have caused them a great deal of distress. So, so they're blessed in that way too. And that's what I'm always telling my wife. The best thing about writing, the thing that has been the most fulfilling to me, is the ability to bless other people to engage, either just because you've provided some entertainment for them, or because you've been able to help somebody out in a need.
Exactly. And my wife and I are also firm believers in the fact that we are blessed in order to be a blessing to others.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, next question then. What would you say drew you to the LitRPG genre specifically? Like, was there a eureka moment that set off in your head that says, I need to write this genre?
Okay, so if I can give a little background of that. So
Yeah.
from I don't know, from 2000, say, through 2015, I was basically in a repeat loop, rereading the same 4 or 5 series. I'd go to Barnes and Noble every week, every other week, and 90% of the time I'd walk out without anything new. Uh, I was getting Wheel of Time books, but those were coming out every 3 years or whatever. I'd get the Raymond Feist, whatever the next book that he had coming out in his Midkemia world. But there was 4 or 5 series that I just kept rereading because they were what I enjoyed in fantasy, and the new stuff that was coming out, the stuff that the big box publishers were putting out, did not appeal to me.
Right.
So I found Kindle Unlimited somewhere in 2015. With that, I found indie fantasy authors, and that was like, oh my gosh, you know what? This stuff is rough, but the stories are what I want. There's action and excitement, and heroes are heroes, and villains are villains, and not everything is gray. And not that gray doesn't have a place in stories, but
sure.
And then I found, I don't know, some bad Chinese translations, and then that led me to some other stuff. I found the first true lit RPG series that I read was Rise to Omniscience by Aaron Oster. Book 1 is called Super Mage, and I was reading that to my son at the time. So he would have been 10, and because I was really trying to encourage him to get into reading. So I was reading that to him, and he, of course, was entranced with it. And I was entranced with it. And I think he'll get this. When I found lit RPG books, found the genre, realized that there was material there like that, it felt like coming home after deployment. It was like, oh my gosh, this is home. This makes so much sense. It combined my love of D&D and EverQuest and various, RPGs, along with my love of reading. I sadly, I know many people disagree, but I'm hard pressed to find a fantasy novel today, or that I've read in the past, that I don't think would be better if you added some LitRPG elements to it. Oh.
Yeah.
I need to know why Gandalf is running from goblins 1 minute and standing up to a Balrog the next.
Exactly.
You know. Anyway, but yeah. So I guess when I found it felt like home. Is the best way to put it.
I personally would love to see the stats on Gandalf's transformation from gray to white.
Mm-hmm.
That I think would be absolutely
Yep.
epic. Many authors talk about being a pantser or a plotter. Where would you say you fall when it comes to your writing process?
Okay, so I am definitely a discovery writer, pantser of sorts, but I always start with an overarching, very high level, looking down from the stars kind of outline. Okay.
Okay.
I and that starts with a series, in that I know where the end point to a series is for the most part, even years before I'm going to get to that end point. Um, I even had a series where I had written the final chapters, after like book 2, and the series ended on 5. So it was quite a ways ahead of time. Um, so I have that, and I like to call a roadmap then for each individual book, where there are landmarks that I have to hit on the way along. But beyond that, I go with the flow and follow the muse. I'm What I do though with it is I ask myself 4 questions, and these are about controlling the pacing. And that's: has there been enough combat? Has there been that combat recently enough, et cetera, et cetera? Has there been enough character progression in terms of their growth as a human being, et cetera? Has that been demonstrated recently enough? Has there been enough character development in terms of power, their status sheet? Have they gotten cool new things? Has there been enough of that to keep people interested? And have I revealed more about the world and given the reader something to envision and see that this is broader than this one individual story? And so I'm always asking myself, have I done those things recently enough? Are they in the proper balance within the story?
Gotcha. What would you say then is the most challenging part for you when it comes to writing lit RPG?
So I'll answer that in a couple different ways. I mean, obviously, because I rotate between stories and am writing multiple series at any given time, there's always the issue of tracking stats and everything that can become onerous.
Mm,
Um, and Not because if I was writing one series and that every single day, every week, all year long, etc., I think that would not be an issue. But because I am usually rotating between 3 different series, there's that definitely springs up. Um, but if I was going to say what the truly hardest thing about this is, it's not starting another new story, because I have so many stories I want to tell. And this year I'm letting myself start 2 new stories, but I'm also finishing up a story and so on and so forth. So,
awesome. Your Welcome to the Multiverse series has been hugely popular. What inspired the core concept of an apocalypse lit RPG system hitting Earth, and how has that story evolved from your initial vision?
okay. So, when I'm conceiving of a new series, it starts or this is my process. I try to think of the hook that is makes it just slightly different. There is nothing new under the sun, right? And if we give the same concept to 100 different lit RPG authors, we'd get 100 different books.
Oh,
Okay,
easily.
but my concept for that was supposed to be different was: what if you knew the apocalypse was coming, but nobody else did, and you couldn't tell them?
Oh,
Um,
oh
so
my.
so that's how it starts, and that's why Silas becomes a forerunner, and he's competing with the other forerunners from Earth, and there's 5 forerunners from each of 5 planets. Is the way it's supposed to be set up, and they're competing for their place in the multiverse. the winning planet gets fully inducted into the multiverse and gets full citizenship and all the luxuries and comforts that go with that. The next two worlds become hunting preserves, basically dungeon planets, where 90% of the population is going to die, but a remnant will remain.
Okay.
And then the lowest two worlds end up fragged for resources, and that's it. So Silas becomes inducted as this forerunner, and so it's this question of how does he act, and he's sent through his forerunner's portal to different off-world missions to do different things to earn points for Earth. He has to interact with the other forerunners from Earth, which creates all sorts of drama. And then eventually he starts finding ways to help integrate Earth and teach some of the people about what's coming. And that's really the first story arc, and that was so by the way, when I set up the series and signed the contract with Podium for the audio with Travis and everything, it was a 6-book series.
Right.
But considering that it took me to book 4, the end of book 4, basically, or to reach where I thought that I was going to reach at the end of book 2, I knew I was off track. And it's just different parts have, it's not that the story has changed really at all in what I conceived. It's still that apocalypse, but not apocalypse beginning, into how does Earth fare in the apocalypse, and into this fusion of different systems from across the multiverse. That's really, what it's been meant to be from the beginning. It's just taking me much longer to do it. And because I get more books to do it, I get to flesh out parts that I wouldn't have gotten to do before.
Gotcha.
So
now you've explored dungeon cores as well, in the case of like Draconic Core, Dragon Sorcerer, magic consumption via Magic Eater, and more. Do you have a favorite type of LitRPG system or even protagonist archetype to write?
Well, as a reader, I probably prefer isekais the most. There's
Okay.
something about the fish out of water, but an apocalypse would be close. But although, ironically, my favorite lit RPG series is what I call a native world lit RPG. It's a series called Divine Apostasy. The author's pen name is brilliant AFK. AF as initials and K is his KAY is the last name, because that's just reminiscent of all my time playing EverQuest back before you played games with sound,
Right.
and all the communication was over your keyboard. And as it turns out, that author happened to play EverQuest back in that same period, so he probably had the same experience. When you're playing and you've got kids at home, and you very frequently have to AFK.
Oh yes.
But yeah, so I don't know. As I say that, I don't know that there is a lit RPG type that I don't like. Each story has tried to have something different. Life in Exile, in my first story, I asked the question, what if I got isekai'd, but my family got isekai'd with me?
Ooh.
How would that change everything? What if your wife and kids are with you? And so it just changed from the 20-year-old college kid who gets isekai'd somewhere to a man with responsibilities, and relationships and all of that. Then in Class Shift, which was my second series, I asked the question, what class is one of the most significant components of a build, but what if your class was constantly changing?
Interesting.
So initially, every time he loses consciousness, his class changes. And with his class change, his body changes. So when he's the barbarian, he's huge and muscular. When he's the blood mage, he's old and shriveled up. So it all matches. And that was a fun trilogy, that I got to play around with that idea. Got to have the covers of that. have 4 figures on each cover, but all 4 of them are him, just in one of the different forms. Um,
Fascinating.
with Shaman's Call, which is my least commercially successful, although it has gotten a little bit of bump because I tied one of the characters into Welcome to the Multiverse. Um, but it started with, what if an AI game wasn't really an AI game? Um,
Ooh.
and so there you go. Then um Dragon Sorcerer was the next series, and that again is me wanting to write something. Writing from a non-human perspective does not tend to sell as well in LitRPG. It doesn't mean that you can't have a successful series, because I mean that series has been commercially successful for me. It just means it's different. But I started with, how would a neurodivergent dragon interact with the world? So it was fun. And the only thing I'd ever seen that was even close to that was oh my goodness, it's the Durand, Maxim Durand, and I cannot remember the name of the dragon, but he had a long series on Royal Road for a long time, on a dragon and his human minion, and it was interesting. So I hadn't seen this exact mindset, and so it was something fun to explore. And then we talked about what the hook with Life in Exile was. With Magic Eater, sort of the idea was trying to move a little bit away from a man who's saving the world, more to a man who's got to find his place in the world. And while I start with that hook always, I end up, after the hook, I go into who is my main character, and for 2 or 3 months before I start writing, I'm thinking about that character a lot, and I usually know that I'm ready to start the work on it when I start having dreams about that character. Um, Even my new series that's coming out in July the book is Unearthed. The series is Apprentice of the Past, and the idea is that the main character is testing to become a full mage, and then the old world ends, and he's frozen in a second in time, and recovered 2,000 years later in a world that doesn't seem to really have magic anymore. So how's that? And interestingly, in his time, there is no such thing as the system. But when he arrives, all the other people are talking about this thing called the system. He still doesn't have it, but they have it. So,
Interesting.
so it'll be fun.
Yeah, it does sound fun. For listeners that are new to your work, which series or even standalone book would you recommend as a starting point, and why?
Um, I mean, it's hard to argue against Welcome to the Multiverse simply because it's been the one that's most successful.
Sure.
Travis Baldree adds a lot of value to the story with his audio, but I don't want to take away from any of the other narrators. Neil Helgers does this great job voicing this, neurodivergent dragon who's completely convinced of his superiority in every way, despite whatever the facts at the moment may happen to be. So, and Daniel Wisniewski does a great job with Class Shift and Shaman's Call. And Peter Burkrot is maybe not as a name that's talked as much about, but he's narrated hundreds of books, and he does a really good job with Life in Exile, which would be a great place for people who want an older main character, who want a family-based story. So just be prepared. I get a lot of people who say they hate the mom in that story.
Oof.
I'm gonna say her interactions are not unrealistic or unreasonable for a person in her position who's just been uprooted from the life that she was happy with to this life where her children are literally in danger, and worse, she has to let her children fight monsters so they can get stronger so they won't be in danger. Think about what mom is actually going to be okay with that.
Sure. Not many come to mind, actually. So you mentioned Unearthed already. What
Mhm.
else is coming up next for you? Any exciting new series or
Yeah.
continuations?
So, oh, yeah, okay. So here's my release schedule, I guess. So I just in earlier this month we released book 2 of Draconic Core, which is a co-authored project with Aaron Holloway. This is Aaron's vision. He invited me to share it with him. I had never touched on a dungeon core, so I'm hopefully putting my own spin on it. But that's been fun. And that's a trilogy. So the third book of that will come out in September, and then that series will be done. In July, I have this Unearthed Apprentice of the Past coming out. In August, I have book 13 of Welcome to the book 12, sorry, of Welcome to the Multiverse coming out. In September, I have, like I said, Unearthed, Draconic Core, the final book of that trilogy. But I also had to squeeze in Magic Eater 6, because that series was supposed to end with 5 and then just continue with the crossovers. But I could not reach a satisfactory ending, and I never want to just chop it. So I'm going to somehow find a way to fit that book in. Okay. October, we'll have book 2 of Apprentice of the Past and book 5 of Apocalypse Breaker, which is a co-authored project with Aaron Renfro. Again, Aaron invited me into his world, and it has been a blast. And I've really come to love Dean, which is a bit of a Hulk smash kind of character, and I had never really ridden one like that. Anger management issues, all of that. And then November is book 13 of Welcome to the Multiverse. And then in December, I have book 1 of another new series called, the working title is Basic. And that's coming out. And that is narrated by Jonathan McLean and Jessica Threet. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to each and every one of those. Let's talk about aspiring writers who are either reading your work or listening to the show right now. What advice would you give them that want to break into LitRPG or even just self-publishing in general?
Okay, so step 1 is read a lot of whatever it is that you want to write. Okay, if you want to write LitRPG, if you haven't read 100 LitRPG books, then I don't think you've probably got a grounding in it. Okay, and not only this, but you should read the ones that are most successful, but you should also read some that have not been so successful, so you can avoid pitfalls that you see there. Anyway, first step. Second step, I tell everyone, put pages on, or put words on the page. Nothing can be done if you're not putting words on the page. Too many people spend 2 years world building and never actually get around to writing the story. Create your framework, have your hook, know who your character is, and then start putting words on the page, because you can edit bad words, but you can't edit non-existent words. Then beyond that, just be involved in the community. We have a very active LitRPG community on Facebook, Reddit, Discord. LitRPG Con is coming up, which is going to be a blast. The people are the friendliest of any author group that I have ever seen, and they're just very helpful in general. I mean, if you're an aspiring author at LitRPG Con, walk up to me, walk up to whoever else is going to be there, and almost all of us are going to be super happy to talk to you, give you whatever advice we can. Although at the end of the day, some of it just boils down to doing it.
You mentioned pitfalls earlier. What common ones would you say they should avoid?
Okay. Well, so first off, the author groups on Facebook or Reddit or Discord are filled with people who are convinced that their book is the next coming of Jesus Christ. Okay. It's the most amazing thing ever. And that the 50 agents that they've submitted it to are just wrong and blind and unable to see the brilliance of what it is that they've written. Okay.
Gotcha.
So the first pitfall to avoid is thinking more of yourself than you should. Think of yourself as an amateur, one who does this for the love of it. put that love into it, and you'll see results with that. And my goodness, I don't know how to say this without it sounding like I'm a jerk, but just like not everyone is cut out to be a doctor, and not everyone is cut out to be a fireman, and not everyone is cut out to serve in the military. Not everyone is cut out to be an author. And it's okay if you're not. If you've got
Yeah.
ideas in your head, go with it, try it, but be okay if it doesn't turn out to be your thing. Find what you're good at. And then in terms of practical pitfalls, like I said, is first off, overbuilding the story without actually writing any of it. Trying to think that you are so completely reinventing the wheel and it's completely new. Tropes exist for a reason, and tropes sell books. So, try to know what the tropes are in your genre and feed into some of those. And then I guess finally is this is another hard thing. Take advice from the people who have achieved what you would like to achieve, and do not listen to the people who are still struggling to get past where you're at. It doesn't mean be rude to them. It just means you need to understand that their advice is not supported by anything other than their own good intentions. Whereas the advice that I got from people who had progressed, there's great authors in LitRPG upon whose shoulders I stand, whether that be Dakota Crowd and James Hunter and many others. Okay. Learning from people like that was extremely beneficial to me. And, people can say, oh, I'm wildly successful, but honestly, still at this day, I still feel like I'm a pulp fiction author. I put out a lot of words. I have a lot of fun. I like to think I have a catchy story, but I don't pretend that my prose is some magical Patrick Rothfuss poetry in motion sort of thing.
Right. When we wrap up here backstage, I want to pick your brain about a couple of things. But final question for you. There's some more rapid fire kind of fun questions for you. You ready?
Go ahead.
What is your favorite class you've created?
That would be Arcane Dreadnought.
Favorite system you've created?
That would be my Psi system. It's a psionic based system.
Okay. Favorite movie of all time?
The Matrix.
Good call. And last but not least, a superpower you would want in a system apocalypse?
So my default go-to is some sort of health regeneration. Because I want to live long enough to learn from my mistakes.
There you go. Sean, good sir, thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this episode. It has been an absolute blast having you on this show.
Yep. Thank you, James, very much.
And to you, dear listeners, thanks to each and every one of you for tuning in. I appreciate all of you. If you enjoyed this episode, I ask that you please rate and review it and even subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts, because it's going to help me to reach more storytellers just like you. You can even drop me a line on social media or email me directly about who you would love to hear next, or even better, if you would like to be a guest on the show. Also, I host a Discord server where I showcase my behind-the-scenes work of audiobook narration. I invite you to click that link in the show notes because I would love to have you as a part of that community. And as always, everybody has a story to tell. And until I talk to you next time, dear listener, peace be with you.